Hi, my name is Sean Uthall.
I'm Olivia Pahanic.
Kenny Aziashi.
Gabriel Poku.
Robert Banville.
And I'm Teddy Spillman. In this lecture, we're going to discuss the costs of different types of coal, as well as the economic ramifications of coal shutdowns throughout the United States, as well as the natural gas growth throughout the country.
So, beneficial byproducts of coal use. Some beneficial byproducts of coal use include rare earth elements and hydrogen. Rare earth elements are used to make high technology products, including smartphones, laser DVDs, and LEDs. The hydrogen and other coal gases can be used in automobiles, power generating fuel cells, fuel power in generating turbines, or as chemical building blocks for a wide range of commercial products. CO2 from coal-fired power plants can be used in enhanced oil recovery and to help make valuable products like plastics and chemicals. So ways to cleanly convert coal to electricity. There are 3 ways to convert coal to electricity, which includes coal gasification, advanced coal energy conversion technologies, and advanced emission control systems. So clean coal effects on U.S. economy. Clean coal stimulates the economy and strengthens energy security. Using coal cleanly reduces the dependence on other countries for natural resource, which boosts our natural energy security. Clean coal can create new jobs and grow economy, particularly in high coal producing states.
Over a decade, coal generated more than 50% of the United States' electricity. But due to a swift decline, coal has consumers expecting that by 2020, 22% of electricity will be generated by fossil fuels. As you can see from the graph, coal has been on a decline since 2006 to 2016, dropping from about 23% to 15% of the United States energy consumption. This is the lowest level of coal production since 1978. The western region of the United States, from Wyoming to Montana, experienced a 36% decline in coal production since 2008. There are many reasons for the decline of coal. The main reasons are that coal is not cost competitive with other fuels in generating electricity because it is inexpensive compared to other sources of energy. In certain areas, for example the Central Appalachian area, the coal seams have decomposed, causing cost curves to rise. Another big reason is that consumers' demand for clean energy. As you can see from this graph, the percentage of coal output in CO2 emissions, there has been a decline since 1961 when coal produced 80% of electricity in the United States, when coal CO2 emissions were about 75% of the fossil fuel emissions. On this slide, we have the decline of coal mining jobs. From 2011 to 2016, there has been a loss of about 39,000 jobs, leaving a total of about 50,000 jobs in the mining industry. Those working in the mines, the decline of coal is a direct blow to their ability to provide for themselves and their families. An experienced coal miner can earn $100,000 along with benefits and the promise of a pension. Jobs in the new industries targeted by economic transition plans often pay minimum wage or require specialized training or college education for further advancement. Coal mining jobs are being replaced by renewable energy jobs. Many large U.S. corporations have sustainability objectives that are driving the demand for zero to low carbon electricity. In 2016, the solar industry was creating U.S. jobs at 17 times the rate of the national economy, rising to more than 260,000 jobs in the U.S. solar industry today. In the U.S. wind industry, now with over 100,000 jobs, a new wind turbine is set up every 2.5 hours. There has been a constant increase in capacity and generation of renewable energy from the increase in jobs. As you can see from the circle graph on the left, in 2015, there was a 23,000 megawatt addition in electricity and 64% of the addition came from renewable energy. The bar graph on the right shows the addition of energy from each source, with renewable claiming the biggest source of energy.
Coal plant closings in the U.S. From 2009 to 2025, 174 coal-fired plants are planning to retire, with the goal to nationally reduce coal-fired plants by 18%. These losses will be offset nationally, but local communities will suffer. Some factors that affect these communities' extent of loss are poverty status, language barriers, and isolation from large job centers. So far, 142 plants have closed since 2009, and 32 more are planning on closing by 2025. The demand for coal in the U.S. has declined from 975 million tons in 2010 to 738 million in 2015, representing a 24% decline. This map represents the coal-fired power plants that have retired from 2009 and plan on retiring in 2025. The dark red circles imply plants that have already retired, and the light pink ones imply those that are planning on retiring. Why are more coal-fired plants closing? One reason is that the cost of renewables is decreasing, while the cost of coal is increasing. Another reason is the MATS rule, or the Mercury and Air Toxic Standard. This limits mercury and other toxic air emissions. States, utilities, and consumers are implementing this standard in order to form goals for cheaper, cleaner energy. As these coal plants retire, the potential to generate electricity is replaced with cheaper alternatives. Also, the rate of plant retirements is predicted to slow unless natural gas prices are still low and other renewable energy costs decline. These are some favorable factors of renewable sources. The ramp and run times of wind turbines and hydroelectric technology are much less than combustion turbines and nuclear technology. Large coal plants are important employers whose wages are typically higher than the community average. They tend to operate for years, providing stable employment. Losing these stable jobs can have a huge impact on a small community, depending on the size of the plant, the number of workers laid off, as well as other characteristics of the community. As previously mentioned, these retirements do not, however, have a large impact on the whole country's economy because of the amount of new jobs created that pertain to renewable energy. These renewable energy-related jobs will not likely be located in the same communities, meaning ex-coal plant employees will either have to move or struggle to search for another job. The overall effect is economic hardship in these communities. Some characteristics that are correlated to a community's economic vulnerability after coal closing are the degree of isolation from metropolitan or global markets and the level of education, or the percent of adults without college degrees. These demographics are at a greater risk due to coal plant retirements. They may experience unemployment, persistent poverty, or other negative social impacts. This map provides information of locations of plant retirements near at-risk populations. The larger the circle, the more at-risk an area may be. Again, the red circles indicate plants that have already retired, and the pink ones indicate plants that plan on retiring. Transitioning into a functional community. Changes in the economy make it very difficult for less educated but skilled workers in rural areas to transition away from natural resource sectors like coal power. These closings have the potential to offer opportunities for economic benefit. Some of these opportunities may be associated with water and environmental reclamation and plant decommissioning. The plant, state government, or federal government may also provide resources such as worker retraining, community services and infrastructure, and economic diversification efforts. Communities with an energy transition plan may be more eligible for these opportunities. If a community identifies that it is at a greater risk for negative outcomes pertaining to health, for example, specific resources can be directed to ensure that a community receives the most effective help.
Replacing coal power plants. All across the country, traditional coal power plants have been shut down and are being replaced or upgraded by natural gas power plants. Duke Energy, for example, one of the largest energy companies in the nation, announced this past November that they are converting 4 of their North Carolina coal power plants to natural gas for a cost of estimated $200 million. Penn State itself just upgraded their coal power plant in 2015 to natural gas as well. These plants that are being upgraded are nearly all smaller, under 30 megawatts, and on the older age of over 50 years, leaving most of the larger coal plants be. Benefits and consequences of natural gas. As compared to coal, natural gas generators produce much lower amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. The air in the surrounding neighborhoods are also much cleaner, as natural gas does not produce nearly as much soot or ash as coal generators do. The rising cost of coal makes natural gas generators now much more viable. Unfortunately, even though they have higher maintenance costs, natural gas generators provide for fewer jobs than coal generators, as well as can be lower in efficiency compared to bituminous coals and other high efficiency coals. When to run coal versus natural gas generators. The startup time and cost of a coal generator is far higher than that of a natural gas generator. Coal generators, for this reason, are rarely turned off and are mainly used as baseline generation. Natural gas generators are often only used during peak hours, assuming that there is a coal generator or a nuclear generator that could be used for baseline. The peak time use of natural gas generators allow for the higher cost of natural gas to be competitive with cheaper and less inexpensive forms of energy. To highlight this previous point, Figure 5.3 clearly shows that coal and nuclear have much lower operational flexibility, meaning that the startup cost and times are far higher than a combined cycle gas turbine. However, coal is much cheaper to operate once active, making them perfect for baseline, while natural gas is better for peak times. Costs of coal and natural gas. According to the U.S. Energy Information Agency, Appalachian coal costs $2.08 per million BTU, which is on the high side for coal prices. Natural gas, in comparison, costs over twice as much at $5.69 per million BTU. This means that when natural gas power plants are used during peak hours and coal power plants are used during baseline, during these peak hours, these plants will make lots of profit due to the difference in price from the marginal cost and the baseline coal cost.
Alternative value-added carbon products from coal. There is a process called coal gasification that can turn coal into clean power, chemicals, hydrogen, and transportation fuels. This process can also be used to capture the carbon from the coal for storage or for enhanced oils. The Department of Energy and the National Energy Technology Laboratory are highly interested in this. For the United States, routes to synthesis of liquid fuels from coal add substantial diversity in fuel supply, capability, a large capacity for fuel production, considering the great extent of domestic coal reserves, and increased energy security that accompany these factors. Department of Energy. Fossil Energy's Advanced Energy Systems program focuses on improving the efficiency of coal-based power systems, enabling affordable carbon dioxide capture, increasing plant availability, and maintaining the highest environmental standards. The program supports gasification research and development programs to convert coal into synthesis gas, also known as syngas, that can be converted into electricity, chemicals, hydrogen, and liquid fuels. The program also advances hydrogen turbine designs to improve the performance of pre-combustion carbon dioxide capture systems and supports advanced combustion systems through research and development programs focused on new high-temperature materials and the continued development of oxy-combustion technologies. National Energy Technology Laboratory. The National Energy Technology Laboratory is a United States national laboratory under the Department of Energy Office of Fossil Energy and owned and operated by the Department of Energy. It supports the Department of Energy's mission to advance the energy security of the United States. The National Energy Technology Laboratory implements a broad spectrum of energy and environmental research and development programs that will return benefits for generations to come. These include enabling domestic coal, natural gas, and oil to economically power our nation's homes, industries, businesses, and transportation, also protects our environment and enhances our energy independence. Also, the National Energy Technology Laboratory has an expertise in coal. National Energy Technology Laboratory continued. Although there are a number of different demonstrated process routes for production of gasoline and diesel fuel from coal, not all of which involve coal gasification, for example, direct coal liquefaction, the most important methods are based on the productions of synthesis gas from gasification of coal, which is converted to liquid hydrocarbons or alcohol for use as fuel or fuel refining feedstock. Because the coal is first gasified, followed by conversion of the syngas to liquid products, these are termed indirect liquefaction methods. Since impurities such as sulfur and mercury are removed from the syngas prior to fuel synthesis, the result is ultra-clean fuel that burned with slower emissions than conventional gasoline and diesel fuel. Sasol. Sasol is an international integrated chemicals and energy company that leverages technologies. It develops and commercializes technologies and build and operate world-scale facilities to produce a range of high-value product stream, including liquid fuels, chemicals, and low-carbon electricity. In fact, South Africa's Sasol has been producing large amounts of these clean-performing coal-derived fuels since 1955, with 30% of the entire country's gasoline and diesel needs produced from indigenous coal. Sasol's coal-to-liquid fuels also include jet fuel, meeting stringent approval for utilization in commercial jet aircraft. Environmental considerations, national energy concerns, and global oil markets could play a role in more extensive developments of these applications.
In 2010, China generated 77% of its electricity using coal. By 2040, it's estimated that China will reduce that to 63%. Power generation typically relies on coal as its principal fuel. At the present time, about 39% of China's coal is burnt in power stations to provide energy. By contrast, the United States uses about 87% of its coal for power utilization. In the near future, the IEO, International Energy Organization, reflects an increase in China, India, and other developing countries' use of coal. In the long term, growth of coal consumption decelerates as policies and regulations encourage the use of cleaner energy sources. Natural gas becomes a more economically competitive because of shale gas development globally, and growth of industrial use of coal slows largely as a result of China's industrial activities. Based on current policies and regulations within China, China is expected to increase its annual energy-related carbon dioxide emissions by more than 7 billion metric tons between 2010 and 2040. Coal consumptions, which are dominated by three major countries, the United States, China, and India, who have the largest reserves of coal in the world, are expected to go from 70% of the total world's consumption to 75% by 2040. In the first decade of the new millennium, productivity gains in natural gas have generated a fundamental shift in which coal was no longer the cheapest fossil fuel to use. At the same time, advancements in renewable sources like solar and wind have made significant inroads into electricity generation, again providing a competitive threat to coal. The United States is the leading consumer of petroleum and oil products in the world. About 4.5 million barrels per day are imported into the United States. Because it is a top importer of oil and relies heavily on foreign nations to provide its oil due to its low stockpiles, the United States is at risk for another country to abuse its power when selling it oil. Domestic fuel sources are preferable to international fuel sources for this exact reason. Another important reason is wrapped up around cost. Possessing one's own fuel source at home is typically cheaper to produce and can be a vibrant part of their own economy. Today, there has been a shift in energy policy as nations look to become more self-sufficient. Coal became our base production for electricity generation due to the 1970s oil embargo. Coal was cheap and domestic, so we switched to it instead of oil, which we were importing and had skyrocketed during the price change. In 2007, President Bush signed the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007, which aimed to move the United States away from importing oils and foreign energy sources and create a new environment for renewable fuel production, U.S. energy security, and improved vehicle economics. The transition away from coal, however, won't be rapid in the production of energy. This is because technologies to help coal plants capture and store carbon emissions could help the industry, but the technology has long been considered too expensive to use commercially. There are also more reasons why coal will remain a baseline generation of fuel. One being, the global reserves for coal are estimated to be quite large. The current global reserve for coal is estimated to be about 1 trillion tons. It is available in an abundant supply in the United States. China, the United States, and Russia hold the largest coal quantities, and if continued production of coal is used, about the next 400 years could run on coal-fired power plants. The third is coal requires a low capital investment. Many of our fuels and power generation technologies are already designed to use coal plants. The last being carbon capture technology. So far, CCS isn't primarily used, but there are multiple ways in which it can be implemented into today's coal firing plants.
The process of coal gasification can turn coal into clean power, chemicals, hydrogen, and transportation fuels. This process can also be used to capture the carbon from the coal for storage or for enhanced oils. For the United States, routes to synthesis of liquid fuels from coal add substantial diversity in fuel supply capability, a large capacity for fuels production, considering the great extent of domestic coal reserves, and increased energy security that accompany these factors. Although there are a number of different demonstrated process routes for production of gasoline and diesel fuel from coal, the most important methods are based on the production of synthesis gas from gasification of coal. South Africa's Sasol has been producing large amounts of these clean-performing coal-derived fuels since 1955, with 30% of the entire country's gasoline and diesel needs produced from indigenous coal.
So there are several ways to generate clean coal. Being able to generate clean coal will stimulate the economy and create more jobs in the U.S. economy.
Along with clean coal being important to the economy, global reserves are on an increase. Its availability is abundant in supply. Coal also offers a low capital investment, and carbon capture technologies are building. Because of these things, coal is, though it is on a decline, is still important to the economy. It provides almost 77% of electricity generation in China alone, along with the U.S. using it as its dominant source of energy. Being that it's domestic, it is a cheaper and more economically viable source of energy for the United States.
Right now, coal plants in the U.S. are expected to decrease in number greatly by 2025. The goal here is to reduce the amount of coal plants by 18%, and right now the amount is decreased by 13%. As the appeal and use of coal declines, more and more coal plants are closing. The loss of appeal may be because of favor in renewable energy sources, the mercury and air toxic standard, and the push for cleaner, cheaper air by states, consumers, and utilities themselves. Although coal plant firing jobs are nationally offset with jobs pertaining to renewable resources, local communities are at risk for economic suffering. Populations of economic and demographic vulnerability are more at risk of suffering. If a transitioning plan is in place, however, a community may end up benefiting and prospering.
Many of these coal generators are being replaced or upgraded by natural gas generators across the country, including here in State College. This can be an extremely costly endeavor, costing millions and millions of dollars. However, the United States have put in many tax incentives and other programs to make this viable. Because the United States public wants to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, many of these plants are switching to natural gas as an alternative, because natural gas produces far less amount of greenhouse gas per BTU. While these generators are more expensive to run, they are much cheaper to start up and much quicker to start up. This means that during peak hours, it is possible to turn on a natural gas generator at a quick time and make a lot of profit over the much cheaper coal using the higher cost price of the natural gas.
Coal has served the country long and well, and the coal industry is on a steady decline and does not seem to be on a turnaround anytime soon. The coal industry now employs 160,000 workers, less than a quarter as many Americans as the renewable energy industry. The renewable energy industry is the next big thing, and the possibility of consumers having a greener home brings in revenue. The future of renewable energy is closing in on the U.S. Communities of homes are generating their own supply of energy and sharing it with other households, resulting in networks of homes that are running on free energy.
So you guys got 2 minutes left.
Leaving us just at the beginning of a new shift in the production of energy.
The process of coal gasification can turn coal into clean power, chemicals, hydrogen, and transportation for fuels. This process can also be used to capture the carbon from the coal for storage and for enhanced oils. For the United States, routes to synthesis of liquid fuels from coal add substantial diversity in fuel supply capability, a large capacity for fuel production, considering the great extent of domestic coal reserves, and increased energy security that accompany these factors. Although there are a number of different demonstrated process routes for production of gasoline and diesel fuels from coal, the most important methods are based on the production of synthesis gas from the gasification of coal. South Africa's Sasol has been producing large amounts of these clean-performing coal-derived fuels since 1955, with 30% of the entire country's gasoline and diesel fuel needs produced from indigenous coal. Thank you so much for listening, and